And today we are talking about what happens when you feel like you need permission to be yourself. If you feel like you need permission to be yourself, it didn't start with you, right? And so ultimately, we know that we're not born second guessing ourselves. That was learned. And generally, that is learned from our environment. It's learned from the people that we interact with. It's learned from both commands. It's learned from actually living in the life and seeing what other people do. We learn to model behavior because that's how children learn. They learn by modeling. They learn by engaging with other people who are older than them with life experience. And some of those habits they keep, some of those they discard, depending on what they feel suits them and what they feel doesn't suit them. And so ultimately, no one is born second guessing themselves. No one is born self-conscious. No one feels like they have to create a new identity to survive or to cope or to become to become a person that somebody is going to like, right? That is taught. And unfortunately, that can be very detrimental. It can be very confusing. It can also feel like you have to change who you are to get along, to make other people happy. But that's not true. Because ultimately, the people that are meant for you will find you. I truly believe that. The people that will like you for who you are. Because subconsciously, you may not realize this, but if you are pretending to be someone that you're not just because it's more comfortable or you think that you're not good enough, then subconsciously you're robbing yourself of an actual true connection, which can make things difficult, which can potentially make you feel like you're always on, so you're exhausted, trying to keep up. And honestly, life isn't meant for all that. Welcome, guys. Today we're talking about if you feel like you need permission to be yourself. My name is Buffy. I am a podcaster with recovering_perfectionist_mama, Grace in Progress, which is a psychology channel. And I am also a podcaster of a true crime channel. I'm an almost 18-year criminal defense attorney, Grace_and_gavel, where truth meets compassion. Thank you for the like. I appreciate it. So if you feel like you need permission to be yourself, it didn't start with you. Likely what it started with subtle hints like, you laugh too much, or you're too loud, or you need to change this about your personality because, it's kind of off-putting, or maybe you should do this. Have you considered doing this because you're too much of this, or you're not enough of this? And ultimately, what do kids do? Kids are like sponges. They absorb it, right? They hold on to it. They take the suggestions because these people are older. They've lived longer. They know what's going on, right? So you try to water yourself down. You try to not be offensive. You try to do the things that you're told and suggested for you to do because you think the adults know, right? And so we know that we weren't born second guessing ourselves, were we? We didn't come out of the womb and say, oh yes, I'm too loud, or I'm not enough, or I'm this, or I'm that. It comes from conditioning. It comes from suggestions, even that seem friendly at first. And then you realize that you are internalizing these things. These are becoming part of who you are, your badge, your armor of who you think you are, who you think you should be. And you look at yourself and you've done the tallying and things just aren't adding up. You find yourself on the lesser side of where you want to be. So you start criticizing yourself. You let your inner critic tell you you're not enough, that if you changed, you would be better. More people would like you. You would fit in more. But who wants to fit in? That can be boring, right? I'm not saying be an outsider, but I'm also saying, we all want to be appreciated. We all want to have our own crew, so to speak. People who love us no matter who we are. People who share things with us. People who genuinely enjoy us and we genuinely enjoy them, right? And so why you feel like you need permission to be yourself. Earlier, I said that needing permission to be yourself didn't start with you, and that is absolutely true. And tonight, we're going to talk about exactly where that comes from and why it's so hard to break. Oftentimes, families give everyone roles. generally when they are children. Can you imagine like something staying with you like from the time you were in childhood to now? So essentially it's like, we don't want you to grow. We want you to stay the same. We want you to be this role because this role serves our family. Maybe you were the peacemaker, the one that always kept the peace, kept everyone in line, kept everyone in order. Maybe you were the strong one, the one that just handled things, that didn't have a lot of needs, was self-sufficient, and could help others too. But the problem with the strong one is they are often neglected themselves because no one wants to help them because they're the strong one. They know how to do things. Why do they need me? I don't know how to do as much as they know how to do. And that has to be a lonely, selfless role. When no one asks, hey, can you do this for me? And then when you need something, no one calls, crickets, right? And so that oftentimes happens with people that are the strong ones. And they have to be lonely, I would think, because everyone has these expectations of who they are and what they need to do, right? And oftentimes, too, you have the peacemaker. The peacemaker is the one who tries to keep everything smooth, tries to monitor reactions, tries to keep chaos at bay. That also would be a difficult role. Then you have the golden child. Hello, welcome. I'm Buffy, for those of you that don't know me, welcome in. And so ultimately, the peacemaker is trying to keep everything good. The golden one is the one that brings honor to the family. They're the straight A student, the athlete, the actress. I mean, put all of it together, right? They have all the pictures, but they make the family look good, right? And so the other thing, though, that we think about, too, is a lot of us are conditioned. A lot of us are conditioned at a young age to do certain things, not to say certain things, not to embarrass ourselves, not to embarrass our families, to not trust outside influences, such as people that are not family, because you can't trust family, some families say. A lot of other families have some baggage, or family issues that they don't want out there, which is why the roles are extremely important, so that every base is covered. And the problem generally happens when you realize that you have this role and you want to outgrow it because it's not fitting you. The garment that you used to wear will not fit you. If you have a garment you wore at 6, when you're 16, it's likely not going to fit, right? And that's the same thing happening. We actually grow, we evolve, we move forward, right? That's what we do. We're not meant to stay the same people that we were even 6 months ago. We're meant to evolve, we're meant to grow. But the problem with family systems is they don't want you to grow. They want you to stay the same. Your growth can be threatening because you gain another awareness that you potentially have that you didn't have before. You're realizing that it's stifling. You're realizing that it is a role that you're boxed into. And so it can make it extremely difficult to want to continue with that role. And oftentimes, the reason that you're so into conditioning is because conditioning gives you approval, and approval equals safety. And a lot of people learn to avoid conflict at all costs. I know I did growing up. I know because I had certain caregivers who did not do conflict. So conflict sometimes can scare people, right? And the other thing with it is approval is safety. The other thing is sometimes speaking freely may feel dangerous. Maybe you were warned about speaking freely, that you were not supposed to speak freely to just anyone. There were only certain people that you could speak freely to. And when you spoke freely, you needed to watch every word that you said because it could be used against you. I grew up in an environment like that. I grew up in an environment where a wink was like, be quiet, tread on thin ice, right? And I internalized that. I also learned to read lips so that my certain conversations that weren't for everyone to hear, I could interpret based on reading lips. I actually taught my husband how to read lips. So interesting little things that you learn. Learn to read facial expressions. I know a lot of you can probably identify with that, especially in a family where things were so tightly lipped. People were so sensitive to potential outsiders and enemies and thinking that people were going to try to harm them in some way emotionally, any number of things. And so ultimately, a lot of us seek validation, external validation, because we don't trust ourselves. And if you are a person that doesn't trust yourself, that can be harmful, it can be hurtful, it can be extremely painful because You literally, and I've said this before, I've said, I don't know how I can trust you when I can't even trust myself sometimes. But I trust you more than I trust myself. And I've had people kind of scratch their heads and like, oh, okay, really? Yeah. Yeah, because I was taught not to trust myself, right? And I think a lot of us were taught that because our families wanted us to rely on them in some ways. Maybe that was what they knew as well. And so they just keep passing it down. You know, that's what people do. And ultimately, we kind of get caught in that. And self-trust is extremely important to build for yourself so that you can actually realize that you can trust yourself. You're the only person you're going to be with for the rest of your life. You need to trust your intuition. You need to trust your voice. You need to trust that you know how to live your life and that your life is your own, right? And you deserve that. And you deserve to authentically be yourself, to have authentic connections with people who think that you're wonderful, because that's what everybody needs. Everybody needs a hype person, a person who loves them no matter what, right? And you don't need permission. You need safety. And when you didn't get it, you learned to ask, right? So let's shift a little bit to true crime here. Everyone focuses on the crash, but that's not often where the story starts. The story starts, like if imagine this reel going and rewinding. The story starts actually after. That's not where the story starts. The story starts after the crash, right? And so then you look at the idea that the abandoned car isn't the mystery. It's what happened before it. And a lot of things went down before the crash, right? So let's talk about abandoned car cases, what people get wrong. We've all seen it in the headlines. A car found, person gone. But what if the crash isn't the event? It's the result of something already happening. Maybe the person was taken to another location by a good Samaritan. Maybe the person decided to walk off on their own because they had a head injury or they were hallucinating in some way or they were harmed from the accident, right? And so ultimately, I've been doing cases. Patricia Meehan actually was involved in a car accident and there were a lot of witnesses, which is very rare. And she ended up walking away and has not been seen since. But the issue with her is she did have an appointment the next day that she never showed up for. She was experiencing some issues psychologically and was looking forward to that appointment. And unfortunately, she never made it. She's not been seen since. So the people said that her behavior was kind of off. And a lot of times people misinterpret behavior. We think that we are forensic psychologists sometimes, where we think that we can read people's behavior and we know what their motivations are and we can figure them out. But oftentimes we misread people. And one of the things is, for instance, in Brandon Lawson made a 911 call because he was scared because there were two cars on either side of him. And he had said something along the lines of that they were ramming into him. And so he said he needed law enforcement help. And so again, that was a scenario where people thought that he was actually paranoid. You can actually listen to the 911 call on YouTube. It's there if you're interested. And so oftentimes we don't know the difference between panic and paranoia. So we assume paranoia because that's generally the worst case scenario, right? And ultimately, the thing with the car crash cases is oftentimes we have no timeline before the crash because all we're concerned about is the crash, right? And so oftentimes assumptions can derail investigations, which once an investigation is on the wrong side, then you're kind of lost there. By the time the car is found, the real story has already unfolded. And unfortunately, we don't have everything that we need to know and need to do. So I just want to say thank you all for tuning in, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I hope that you all come back and see me again soon, and I hope you will come back. Have a great day, and thank you so much for your support. It means a lot to me, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.